As we are waiting to start, I'm just gonna do a little round so you can see a little bit. This is our beautiful Parkside building. And as we are walking, the camera is approaching. This is actually our associate in research. This is Belgrade conference. So he has no idea how I would approach him. And this is where we have our Starbucks. And then this is the really, really nice place, about 4 different floors. And as you know, we are collaborating with University of Arts in Belgrade on this, but it's virtual, so we have a chance a little bit to see the place. Okay, I don't know if this was helpful, but thank you. It is amazing space. Yeah, you should see the Dean of Research. He was totally shocked when I approached him because they're not exactly used to this kind of improvisational activities. Okay, and obviously as you can see the clouds. See the clouds, that's normal. Okay, I think we should start. We are recording and we are live on YouTube. Okay, so we had a really, really exciting first day. Apologies, a lot of movement here, but I'll be quick. And then I'll switch my sound. Persephone Sextou is a professor, and it's coming from Canterbury, Christchurch University. It's the director of the Sidney, the Haan Research Center for Arts and Health. The topic is disruption and response to pandemic in education and creative digital arts, democratization through digital performance, ethics and diversity in digital performing arts. Persephone, with great pleasure. Camera is yours.
Thank you, and thank you for the invitation. Good morning, everyone. Dobro jutro. Kalimera, buenos dias. I'm delighted to be with you today. It is a rainy and cloudy day in England, no surprise, surprise. But I heard from you this morning that the same weather is in Belgrade, in Belgrade. So at least we are in the same kind of zone. I will share my screen now so that I can start my PowerPoint presentation. Can you please confirm, Alexander, that you can see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Wonderful. Okay, so let's begin. The title of the keynote is Arts-Based Digital Storytelling in Pediatrics, Enhancing Hospitalized Children's Emotional Well-Being Through Animation Films During COVID-19. First of all, I would like to say a few things about my background to justify why I am not an expert in digital storytelling, but an experienced arts-based researcher. My background is in education, and then my PhD, master's and PhD in drama and theater in education. But since 2008, I dedicate my research in exploring the impact of participatory arts, bedside theater performance in particular, in hospitals for children. I'm looking into the synergies between the performer and the child when that child is in bed in illness. And I'm using puppetry, storytelling, music, performance in an intimate way, in a very bespoke way, tailored for the needs of each child, using a lot of improvisation and trying to connect with that child in that moment so that the performance is an opportunity for the child to be distracted from pain, to connect with the story, to feel safe within the fictional conditions of time and space in that story, and hopefully to escape into a more pleasant environment. And that, according to my research over 10, 15 years now, has a huge impact on children's well-being. It helps them to relax, it helps them to participate and collaborate better with nurses and adults before their treatments. It helps them to reduce their preoperative anxiety. It helps them to connect with and interact with other people around them. So it gives them a sense of social interaction as well. And all of that supports the normalization of their hospital experience. During COVID, as you probably all know already, face-to-face performances on hospital wards were not allowed. And that created a need for me to find other ways of delivering those projects, to go and find those children where they need us most in difficult time, at times of personal crisis, but also global crisis. That's why my performative experience in hospitals had to change the mode of delivery. It had to find different alternative, creative ways to outreach for those children in hospitals and support them as much as we can, so that they feel better. I would like to say a little bit about my philosophy about arts-based research and illness. My philosophy is rooted in Aristotle and in Heraclitus. My origins are Greek. I come from Thessaloniki, from the north part of Greece, the Greek Macedonian part. And Aristotle's birthplace is actually about half an hour drive from where I was born. So I feel quite privileged. I feel very close and connected to Aristotle. Aristotle's theory about life and happiness was called eudaimonia. And it's about the fulfillment when we do something for the general good, when we are connected with others, when our work has meaning to others, when we return something back to the community. Because according to Aristotle, we are political animals. We live with others. So we can't think just about ourselves, about our careers, about what we can achieve, about our titles. For me, it's important to have a sense of eudaimonia, the good demon, something that we can give back to others who live with us. So all the well-intended activities produce good results for the many. So I'm driven by that, to give something back to children, to parents and families who suffer with their children when they are in hospital, to give something and support hospital staff, clinicians and nurses who work so hard with those children. Heraclitus' theory of change is about the flexibility and the flexicity and the ongoing change of the universe. So nothing should be taken for granted. Nothing should be, we shouldn't feel like a stagnant pond. Everything is organic and there is an evolution in life as well as in nature and in the universe. From that perspective, illness brings change in a child's life, and it brings a lot of change in their parents' lives and in the whole family. But we think that it's good to see illness as another aspect of life, as a new identity. And we have to adapt to this new identity. As parents, carers, friends in the environment of an ill child, as teachers as well, as artists, we need to adapt. We need to learn how to grow. And COVID-19 was a great opportunity for us to learn how to do that. So this project I'm presenting today, as all my work, all my research, is based on knowledge transfer and co-production. I find it fascinating to be able to create the right conditions between the participants, between the audience and the performers, so that they build a symbiotic approach where they can be together and work together. And within the sense of symbiotic approach, I would like to stress the importance of empathy and compassion. Empathy and compassion are not just sympathy. It's not about feeling sorry about someone who's unwell. It's about being with that person in that condition, experience the same problem with them, because we want to understand what they go through, and we want to do something about it, to change it, to help them in that situation. So as an artist at heart, but also as a researcher, I use participatory arts in health and community care services to create those conditions, to enable children as an audience to participate in the arts for their own benefit, but also for the benefit of their environment. As you can see in that circle, I start with a research idea, then I run a pilot study, I reflect on the findings from the pilot, and then I redesign, I refine my tools based on my findings to go for the main study. And then after that, the polished methodology and the theatrical intervention, the performance is more tailored to the needs of a specific group in a hospital with a specific condition maybe, or in a specific demographic. So I implement the main study, and the circle goes on and on. And this is how I think from the generation of one research idea, we move into different stages of making this idea happen, to materialize our ideas, so that what we create is not something that, you know, may be great in theory, but it can also be applied. And that is the beauty of applied performance, the beauty of applied theatre. And as my work sits under applied arts with health and for health, I dare to say that there are great implications of applications of theatre in applied health as well. So for example, an idea could be about the importance of participatory films or the importance of digital arts to support children's perioperative anxiety before and after an operation, and how that could support the children, the families, the hospital staff, how that could contribute to prevention of mental illness in the future, and how that might also have a positive impact on GP services as well as in public health. That is how we give something back to the community. And we need to understand about the power of the arts. Maybe we speak a different language with the clinicians, but synergies are possible and they can be extremely effective. And we need to think about that when we design research, to transfer knowledge from what we know in our academic higher education bubble, and how we can give something to people and support them in when they are in crisis and when they need us most. So some justifications for the need of this project. I'm not going in detail here because I think it's been a time where we all really understood it very well through personal experience and family experience. The pandemic has created and increased a demand for new tools in research, for new methods of accessing and supporting vulnerable children, vulnerable young people and adults, supporting their physical needs, their emotional needs, their financial needs. And it's been a challenge. And we all had to invent ways of doing that. The fact that we are very adaptable as human beings does not mean that because we can make it, because we managed to achieve it, because we found ways to adapt, that we necessarily enjoyed it, because we didn't. And when I was watching one of the films that the first keynote presented at this conference yesterday morning, it was quite obvious to me that those wonderful singers had a great difficulty to perform in a studio and be recorded. The chemistry with the audience was missing. The intimacy was missing. The energy was missing, because we perform for other people and we perform with them. There's an exchange, a participation between the performer and the audience. And when that is gone, then it's extremely difficult to replace it and remake it in our minds so that we can convince ourselves as artists that a fictional audience is there somewhere for us. So it's been challenging. However, I think we managed to do a lot of achievement, and this presentation explores how the digital resources for hospitalized children, for those especially with chronic conditions, long-term patients, for example, could make a difference to them, could help them better understand their emotional needs, help them relax and feel more sociable, help them to normalize their hospital experience. And I would like to say here that my research over the years has taken place in Greece, Australia, where I'm currently adjunct with Griffith University, and in Birmingham, where I'm based, although I work for Canterbury Christchurch University. So the study I will present today took place at Birmingham Children's Hospital, which is a huge hospital with many departments and a variety of children. And I worked in close collaboration with the James Brindley School that is based in that hospital. So hospital teachers were my hands, basically. They were the links for me, the people who gave me access to those children on the wards before the pandemic and during the pandemic, because they helped me to deliver those digital films when the artists were not allowed to visit anymore. So what I do is, as you can see from the different colors on the screen, I tried to throw a little bit of color here. I use animation cartoon films to enable children's transition from reality to fantasy during their hospitalization. That means that the aim was to explore if a digital film with animation cartoon characters could create that escape, or in other ways, if we could blow up a fictional plastic bubble with lots of elasticity and go in that bubble and invite the child to join us in that fictional digital space and time where things can happen, nobody is judged, everything can work for the benefit of the individuals without any criticism, a safe space. By doing that, my aim is to create a getaway for sick children, an escapism to imagined worlds, moments, and experiences. And we need to understand that as live performance, that those digital films were aimed to create those moments and experiences. However, there is no promise and there is no guarantee that all the children will enjoy the film in the same way, that all the children will have the same kind of experiences and moments, because every child is different and every child is special. My focus is diverted from physical bedside performance to digital arts as stimuli for hospitalized children to communicate their emotional needs to adults. So the challenge there was for me to see if by watching those films, the children could then have a discussion with a hospital teacher or with their parents and carers. If the film could inspire those children to open up by talking about the characters of the story or by retelling the story. And in that process of talking about fictional places and times and incidents, if that would create an opportunity for them to start talking about themselves a little bit, to express their feelings and emotions. And it's important here to understand that this can be extremely challenging for a child because of the fear, because of their response to the clinical environment. There is a lot of stress, lots of clinical stressors that can make a child feel reserved, not wanting to talk about how they feel when they are in hospital. And it's extremely important to also understand that when a child does not reveal their internal worlds, when they don't talk about how they feel, either emotionally or physically, when they can't find the words or the language to say, this is where I hurt, this is where I feel pain, this is how I feel, then it's very difficult for the clinicians to assess their pain. And when we can't assess pain, we cannot manage it well. So my ambition was to see if by using digital performance in replacement of live performance bedside, we could create those conditions for children to express how they feel so that hospital staff can understand their pain and manage their pain better. By paying attention to children's emotional health and well-being, it is hoped that all that hidden suffering of silent ill children will be spoken. But again, we can't promise that because it's the child's right to speak or remain silent. And it's absolutely fine if they don't want to respond to our art, if they don't want to interact with the performer, if they don't want to discuss the digital film. It's their right to say no. That was my dog who just entered the room. If you heard some noise, I apologize. So I investigated if digital storytelling can improve our understanding of children's experience in pediatrics. On this slide, I tried to present the whole project at a glance. So very quickly, the aim was to explore the improvement of children's communication of emotions and psychological well-being through digital storytelling. I used a qualitative approach. I collected stories, data by questionnaire, an open questionnaire, a proforma that was specifically created and designed for children with a child-friendly language, with loads of colors, with space rockets and designs and some drawings. And hospital teachers supported me because they gave those performance to the children, and they filled them in together when children were young and they couldn't write, or the children wrote and responded to my questions directly if they had writing skills. So this presentation focuses on what children told about their emotional experience in hospital. And if we have time, I will share a story by a boy, an 11-year-old boy, Alan. Conclusions. It's early in the presentation to talk about conclusions, but here they are for you who can read, and I'm sure that there will be time to discuss them later soon. So I'm going to present the Rocket Arts project. It was an idea I had before COVID. It was funded by BBC Children in Need, by the lottery scheme in the UK, by Canterbury Trust, and also by the Grimmett Trust. So it attracted a lot of funding. The project developed in two phases. One was between October 2019 until March 2020, when the world stopped. And phase B started in May 2020. I reacted very quickly, as you can see, and ended in March 2021. In the main phase, we performed in hospitals face-to-face. In phase B, which I will be discussing with you today, digital stories were downloaded on hospital teachers' iPads, and they were shared with children on the wards. The children who participated were between the ages of 4 to 11. They were long-term inpatients in pediatrics, cardiac, oncology, hemoglobin pathology, dialysis, neurosurgery, PICU, that stands for Pediatrics Intensive Care Units, and complex care wards. The results of phase A are published, and this is an open access article in Research in Drama Education, so you can read it for free if you are interested. And the main phase asks the question, the main phase that, took place during COVID asks the question, can bedside digital arts-based resources help hospitalized children to verbalize their emotional needs and support their psychological well-being during the pandemic? With regards to my methodology, I just want to say that it's important that I worked with hospital teachers. This study took an opportunistic sample from those children or the words which were available to hospital teachers on the days that they were working on the words with those children. Consents were collected, ethical approvals were collected before that, obviously. And there were some post-performance relaxed conversations and reflections with the teachers on MS Teams, where the teachers shared their experience of working with children on the words. So that gave me an opportunity to understand the results I received from the children's writings and their stories through the eyes of those experienced teachers. And that quite illustrated the whole experience for me, because I was not there. I couldn't be there because of the pandemic. So we produced 2 films with an extremely limited range of skills and very little technical support. And now I will try to stop sharing my presentation so that I can share part of that film, because it's 12 minutes. So I think it's better not to show the whole 12 minutes, but just a few so that you can have a taste. So I'm stopping sharing my screen now. And I will share the video. Hello. We heard you love stories. Well, this is a story about space. And like all rocket art stories, it's going to be a special one. Our story begins as our hero is waking up from a lovely nap.
Oh, hi there. It's me, Simba. Remember me? I missed you. How are you? I feel so fresh now that I've woken up. I'm going to have some breakfast so that I can feel full of energy. What's your favorite breakfast?
As Simba was sipping his tea, he heard a noise. So, with his big and fluffy ears raised, he went on a hunt to find where the noise was coming from. He looked everywhere until finally he found what it was.
What's that noise? Do you hear it too? Where is it coming from? Let's find out, shall we? Shall we?
New planet detected. New planet detected. New planet detected. New planet detected.
He couldn't wait to hop in his spaceship and go. But first, he had to get ready. Do you know what astronauts need to put on before they go into space? That's right. They need their spacesuit. Simba put on his spacesuit and went towards his spaceship.
This spacesuit is so comfortable. It fits like a glove. Before we go, we should make sure that our spaceship is full of fuel, so that we can come back home later. Let's check the fuel meter, shall we?
Fuel level low.
Liftoff!
As Simba's spaceship flew through the beautiful sky, further and further away from Earth, he was approaching the new planet. A short while later, the spaceship computer told Simba that he had finally arrived.
Yay! We made it! Come, let's go out and explore. Wow, this feels like a big desert. It's dark and it's pretty boring. Wait, what's that? It looks like a cave to me. I think I'm going to go check it out. Stay by my side.
Simba had fallen.
Let's escape quickly.
Simba swam back to where he fell as quickly as he could. He was very fast.
Thank you so much, Jeremy. I wouldn't be able to go home without them. You know, I'm sorry for running away. I was scared. I thought you were a bad dragon.
Okay, Simba. I'm big, but really, I'm a nice dragon.
Hey, Jeremy, would you like to be my friend?
Of course. That sounds wonderful.
They sat and talked.
Now I can finally smell the rose.
Simba and Jeremy had become such good friends. Simba used his high-tech spacesuit to teleport back out of the cave, and grateful that he had his keys, he entered his spaceship and flew back home, just in time for dinner.
What an adventure that was. We should never judge a book by its cover. That means we shouldn't think about things about people before we get to know them, just like with Jeremy. Now, it's time for me to have my dinner.
Food!
I'll see you next time.
And so this story comes to an end. We hope you enjoyed it as much as Simba and Jeremy did. Take care!
So I stopped sharing my video. I had to jump from one scene to another so that it won't take a lot of our time. And I'm going to share my screen to continue my PowerPoint presentation now. Okay. So that film was followed by a series of digital drills, digital exercises for the children. The hospital teachers worked with them, like word matches, for example. As you can see, that's an interactive kind of work, resource for children. They were all links that were downloaded on hospital teachers' iPads. And that's number 2. for children between the age of 2 till 5. And word match number 3 for children between 5 and 8 years old. Can you see my presentation? Can you please confirm?
Yes,
Yes, yes.
I can see the presentation.
Okay. Oh, I'm glad my technical skills are improving.
Absolutely. But
thank
any minute now, you're going to be an expert.
I'm far from becoming an expert, but at least I'm trying. So yeah, there was another drill for the children to arrange the scenes with pictures and write a little bit of, do a bit of writing next under the storyline. And for older children, obviously more demanding images, and the expectation was to use a better language. However, we need to remember here that when we work in a hospital environment, the real age of a child is not necessarily the actual developmental age. So an 8-year-old child may cognitively be, at age 3. So expectations need to be modest and moderated according to their specific needs. The next film I would like to show you, and this one is embedded, so hopefully it will work, is this one. This was created with the Playmobil toys. I'm very proud for this. It's very innovative. The idea comes from the use of those Playmobil sets during the performance in phase A of Rocket Arts, when the performer was bedside next to the child and they could actually play with those objects in order to project feelings and emotions on objects, and also to try to familiarize with different relationships between doctors and patients. The main character, the protagonist, if you like, is Simba, a Cocker Spaniel dog, same as in the previous story. And is represented by a Playmobil toy. You can see Simba on the screen. And I have to confess to you that Simba is my actual family dog, and he's here somewhere around me. Maybe he will show up again later. So let's watch this film. It's much smaller, so I would like to play it all.
Once upon a time, there was a therapy dog named Simba. A therapy dog is trained to provide affection, comfort, and love to children in hospitals. Simba has friendly eyes and a lovely temperament. He works at the children's hospital with his trainer Lucy. This is the hospital where Simba works. Days are busy for Simba, but he loves it and he never complains. Life on the wards is full of cuddles, giggles, and wagging tails whenever Simba is around. And this is Joe. Joe's father takes him to the children's hospital for his regular scans because his head hurts all the time. Joe remembers when he first met Simba. He remembers that it was a Tuesday. It's a Tuesday, and Simba is visiting Joe in hospital. Joe is having a video monitoring today. The doctor wants to see on the screen how his brain works. Dr. Phillips enters the scan room and walks up to Joe's bed. He tells Joe that he will attach tiny metal pieces with some really sticky glue to his head. It will be just as sticky as Joe's fingers when he has pancakes with syrup. Joe laughs. He loves pancakes with syrup. Dr. Phillips is so funny. He always makes good jokes. Simba likes Dr. Phillips too and moves in closer for a treat. Simba barks and wags his tail happily. Dr. Phillips asks Simba to stay calm and still like a statue. Simba stays super still on his back legs and watches Joe. Joe looks at Simba and their eyes meet. There is an instant connection. Something magical is happening. To Joe's surprise, Simba's eyes turn into screens, just like his computer screen back home. It's like a video game. Joe's eyes close and he falls fast asleep. Joe drifts away. He's dreaming. I wonder what we would see. Joe's dream. This time Joe dreams he is in outer space. He sees Simba in a spacesuit speeding around the Earth. Joe follows Simba to see where he's going. He gazes in amazement as the colorful stars and galaxies swirl all around him. He watches the swirling galaxies, tail-shaped lakes, and long green rivers running in purple valleys. Everywhere he turns, he sees the most beautiful things. Joe feels so relaxed. He notices a gentle bird is flying right next to him peacefully. Joe follows the bird, and together they fly through a space dust storm. So many tiny, shiny stars. They glitter like jewelry. But Joe is not the only one watching the stars. Little people are also watching the stars from their planets. Suddenly, Joe realizes that Simba is gone. He looks up into the distance and sees the most amazing thing of all. Simba has become a group of stars, sparkling like diamonds. Excited, Joe flies closer and closer to Simba. He hears Simba whisper in his ear. There are many magical animals that live in space. All it takes is to use your imagination, and the animals will show up, just like magic. Just then, a wolf popped up right in front of Joe. The wolf glows like electric blue. Simba was right. Space is a beautiful wonderland of magical creatures. And out of nowhere, a red fox appears too. The fox looks at Joe with her charming eyes. Joe is mesmerized and watches without a sound. He spots something dancing around him. A colorful bird with a long tail. It's a phoenix, a very special bird that lives forever. The bird takes Joe to his secret garden. Joe sees a green cat standing in the lovely garden, surrounded by pink and purple daisies. He takes a deep breath. The flowers smell wonderful. Joe feels so calm and relaxed. It is all so peaceful here, but he misses his family. He wants to go home. Joe looks around one last time. It is so beautiful out here, but he misses everyone and wants to go home. Joe decides to leave the magical animals and turn back to Earth. Lucky for Joe, a spaceship arrives just in time to pick him up. He jumps in and looks out the window as the blue atmosphere. Joe can see how beautiful it is back on Earth. The sky is so bright and sunny today. Joe hears Dr. Phillips' voice that brings him back to the room. He opens his eyes, and for a moment he is confused. Then he remembers the milky galaxies and all the magical animals that he left behind. Joe blinks. He thought he saw something flying above him. Is it a phoenix? Joe's father helps him into his wheelchair to go home. Joe looks up and sees a bright object in fast motion. It's a space rocket, he shouts. Simba barks happily and everybody laughs. Joe laughs too. He knows that it was all a beautiful dream and calls Simba to sit next to him. Good boy, Simba. Joe gives Simba a tasty treat. Good boy. Whenever Joe is in hospital feeling worried and his heart beating fast, Simba the therapy dog is there for him to absorb his fears like a sponge and help him to be brave. After all, that's what good friends are for.
Okay, I was touched in the end by my own film. This is what happens to emotional performers and art makers. And I have to confess that some of the background images, paintings that we used for that film are paintings on silk that my belated mother painted. And the film was dedicated to my father, Yorgos, and my two aunts, Ekaterini and Vasiliki, who all died during COVID. And life goes on. So the methodology, how we collected stories. Hospital teachers watched digital films together with the children using the school's electronic devices in line with hospital safeguarding policies during that period. Children's stories evolved mainly after watching the films with the teachers. Younger children told their stories to the teachers who wrote them down on the proforma for them, and older children wrote their stories directly on the proforma unless they were restricted by their condition. And here is the first example of the proforma. So you can see that on the first page, there is a line for some demographics like the date, the ward, the child's age and gender. Obviously no names, no details about their conditions because of safeguarding issues and confidentiality. We have to be extremely attentive to ethics. And then I asked the children if they liked the story and gave them only a scale 2 of Likert faces, expressing emotions, happy or sad. And then I offered the teacher with the child some prompt sentences, some opening sentences, like, for example, once upon a time there was a monster sitting outside a spaceship, or Simba could hear music coming from, or a unicorn showed up just at the right time, just to create an appetite and give the children a start to start writing their own story. The majority of children, of course, just retold the story they watched on the film, but others went further than that and beyond than that. As you can read, that child wrote that it was a monster. It had sharp teeth and it was green. He was stomping because he wanted to eat the people with his sharp teeth, and so on. Isn't it amazing that that child kind of combined the story he watched with his own imagination to create something quite unique and very much something that he owned, his story. And as you are watching more and more examples of performers completed by children, I will share some of the findings. 3 out of 6 children in oncology responded positively to the project and wrote their own stories. 3 children did not like the project and reported that they felt bored with doing homework. And I completely understand why someone in hospital might not want to engage with homework. So that's absolutely fine. 2 of those children interrupted the project. None of them appeared motivated to tell a story. And this psychology can be expected and understood given the child's context in oncology. Receiving a cancer diagnosis and treatment may elicit difficult emotions such as denial, anger, anxiety, or depression. And these emotions may manifest in ways that psychologically affect children and cause changes in their behavior. Why I'm making a note of this is because as artists, we need to be aware of children's rights to say no. As previously I said that they can remain silent if they want. It's a power game. Remember that children in hospital are expected to be good patients. They're expected to collaborate with the nursing staff and doctors. They are expected to take their medication religiously. They're expected to stay still in treatments, for scans, for cannulation, for anesthesia purposes. They're expected to be super children, superheroes. So that they find it extremely difficult to say no to adults, to say no to others who make decisions for their health. But we come from an outside culture as artists to perform or to create a digital piece of work, to show them a video, to tell them a digital story. And what we try to do there is to shift that game of power. We try to give the child ownership of their situation and some control over their situation by creating their own stories, of course, but also by giving them an opportunity to say no, to say, I don't want it, I don't like it. And if they say that, it might not be a direct response, reflection, and feedback to the quality of the artistic product. It might just be the fact that the child has had enough of treatment, or the child is in pain, or they just don't want to do anything. Or maybe they would love to just escape and run away, but because they can't do it, the person that it's easier to reject is the hospital teacher or the artist, because they can't reject and they can't go against what the doctors say. Okay, so from that perspective, the digital storytelling as a piece of art form, as an artistic product, creates that dual opportunity for the child to be extremely engaged with the film and produce their own story. Also, the opportunity to say, no, I don't want to participate in this. I want to be completely disengaged, and it's fine. So that liberates the child. It gives them the right and the freedom to do, for once, maybe something that they like, and show that they have an opinion, they can voice their needs, and they can communicate through that rejection to the clinical staff and to their parents and families. They can communicate what they actually want to do. On the back side of that pro forma, there was a list of learning skills for the teacher to tick, and these were based on the national curriculum for Key Stage 1, Key Stage 2 in the UK, which is for children between that age group, 4 to 11. In total, we collected 24 stories and a lot of wonderful drawings, so the children could also do a bit of drawing. 14 stories were complete in inverted commas, because who am I to judge if those stories were complete or incomplete? But what I mean by complete, just not to get me wrong, what I mean by that is that they were comprehensive. So there was the beginning, there was a middle and an ending. We could understand what the story was about. And the average word count for those stories was about 120 words. So that's a decent kind of, length for a story to have enough space for the incidents to revolve. 10 stories were incomplete or unresolved from our perspective, or they didn't make sense to us. But obviously, this does not make that they didn't make any sense to those children. So by that categorization, by no means I want to say that the stories who seemed more complete to the adults' eyes were better than those that were incomplete, but could be wonderful and could make sense to the children's eyes. All the stories were fantastic. Despite the clear guidelines we gave for the teachers to let the children tell the stories in their own words, it's not certain if teachers affected the length of the stories or the vocabulary by offering children help with words, which is what teachers would normally do in a classroom. In 11 stories, nearly half of the sample proved novel and stimulating. Characters, places, and feelings were described either directly or indirectly. Other stories started with an opening sentence, but moved away from the film's memories, showing some levels of creativity, imagination, and ownership of the story. A small number of stories was remarkable due to their originality and the use of imagination, metaphor, and allegory. Metaphor, of course, is something that only children above the age of 8, 9 years old can use in their writing because of their cognitive development. Younger children find it difficult to understand metaphor. Also children with neurological conditions, children in the autistic spectrum, they find it difficult to understand allegory and metaphor. So there was no expectation for them to use it in their stories. There were no expectations whatsoever for any child to use anything in their stories. We were just open to see what the children would come back with. It would have been interesting from an educational and psychological perspective to examine the children's cognitive abilities, skills, talents, and emotional needs. So that's something perhaps we could do later at the next stage of research, where we could use digital films as stimuli to evaluate children's ability to write stories and use their imagination in written language. So maybe further investigation is required. I hope that we have time to share Alan's story. Once upon a time, there was a pair of wellies in a village shop. They were waiting for someone to buy them. One day, an old man went into the shop. "These are the wellies." He looked at them and said, "Ah, I like these." It was autumn. The sun was shining and it was beautiful. He lived close to the park. There was a lake there. So he put on his boots, took his basket and poles and went off to the park. Wellies were happy. The wellies were fishing buddies with the old man. Excuse me. One day the man fell from a cliff and couldn't walk. His foot was swollen. Could be broken. "Ah, just what I needed," he said between his teeth. He called for help and his brother came and carried him home. He couldn't walk and did not go fishing that day. His boots were sad. The next day the old man was not well. He stayed in bed. The doctor visited him and gave him orders. "Stay at home." His wellies were sad again. On one day the man died and it was winter, so his boots got angry and walked away. "We can go anywhere," they said. They walked on the road and went to the park and jumped in the snow. They got all muddy. They returned home to dry off. But the house was quiet. "Stupid man, why did you die?" So that's Alan's story. Excuse me. Alan is obviously a made-up name. It's not the child's real name. That child who wrote that story found out about his grandfather's death during COVID when he was in hospital and he couldn't say goodbyes. In fact, hospital teachers informed me that the parent found out about the grandfather's death on his phone while he was with the child in hospital. So the communication of bad news was not ideal. We can't possibly make interpretations of that story. We need to be extremely careful. There are some indications and we could easily jump into conclusions, but we have to treat it as a story, just as a story that obviously shows the emotional state of that child. There were a lot of feelings being expressed here. And what is amazing is that that particular child used the digital story of Simba, who traveled in space, as a stimulus, but he actually didn't respond to that directly. He didn't write a story about Simba. So here perhaps we can say that the digital film enabled the child to relax, feel trusted, feel emotionally secure, and talk about how that story with the wellies took place in autumn and what happened to that man. And that is always a positive thing. So the emotional space that Rocket Arts created for Alan to express his grief cannot be overlooked here or undervalued. The story Alan shared with the teacher was one of mourning. it shows another side to Alan that is revealed in our understanding of children in hospital. It is about that child who was deeply connected to memories of his grandfather, who was deeply angry when his grandfather died. So we could say that the project gave meaning to the child's emotions. Talking about his loss in the story involves the transference of the wellies from the story to the setting of the hospital. And what is remarkable about this is that Alan became, in a way, the owner and user of his own emotions towards describing a painful and difficult situation. That perhaps otherwise, if the digital film has not been offered to him, he wouldn't have had the opportunity to talk about how he felt. So some concluding thoughts, and I'm getting closer to the end of my presentation. When children watch digital stories together with their teachers, they are enabled to express their emotional needs and experiences. Digital stories create conditions for enjoyment and communication of feelings. In the absence of physical bedside performance in pediatrics, digital arts can potentially provide children with an opportunity to verbalize pain in pediatrics. When the attempts of adults to enter the psychological worlds of hospitalized children and understand their pain are not what the child needs or can access, arts-based online resources can potentially offer ways of
Running props and stuff.
the hidden sides of how.
I brought some fun glasses,
That's cool.
but I didn't realise the mad. I want to do something.
I
mad.
can hear people talking in the background. Is this an indication for me to end my presentation?
Sort of, yes. It's like, gently.
Gently. So some thoughts to take away. Can arts-based digital resources have a role in digital health? Can arts-based digital resources be used as a tool to access how children feel and help us understand and manage their pain better? And to conclude, I would like to say that we must open to challenges and be brave to use combinations of digital with applied performance to increase the potential of participatory arts in child health care at times when vulnerable children need to be listened to, respected, and supported. And thank you very much for listening today. Thank you for your patience. I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you, Persephone. This was absolutely amazing in many ways, but I think the most important thing that obviously we'll discuss that in a panel following is to extend when digital performing arts, the digital performance, to what extent it can play the role in health and how it can be built into the health of children. I think this is really, really groundbreaking. We do arts or we do social activism, but this is opening something for us that the digital performance can also be a very important actant in health. And that gives another dimension. Obviously, we all know that art can heal, that art can help. But your presentation focuses us in a very, very, very important direction. And I'm really looking forward to a discussion. Thank you again, Professor, very much for this.